If April showers bring May flowers, then we're going to be in store for a beautiful month of May. It was a soggy start to April, although we did level out with some more seasonable conditions for the latter half of the month. In this week's edition of the Climate Friday newsletter, we're going to be talking about the month of April and what we saw both in terms of precipitation as well as temperatures. And later on, we'll be breaking down the link between climate change and some changes that we're observing with our April weather. If you're not already subscribed, WTOL.com/email is the place to go. You can get the latest every week sent straight to your inbox, and also check out our YouTube channel and WTOL 11 Plus for the latest streaming videos and climate-related information. So let's start off by talking about rain. Boy, April did start off with a soggy start to the month. In fact, we came close to a single-day rainfall record throughout April history in the Toledo area. We came just shy of that record, but still, April 2nd delivered 2.26 inches of rain, and that amounted for over half of our monthly rainfall. We did have a bit more of a seasonable latter half of the month, and April rainfall as a whole totaled 4.29 inches. In total, that puts us a little bit above average, not quite an inch above normal. 0.84 is the differential between what we observed, at least at Toledo Express Airport, and what is typical for the month of April. Now, it is possible that your rain gauge did pick up on a different amount of rainfall. I'd love to hear in the comments on social media how much rain you saw and how it compares to the official observation at Toledo Express. So what about the spring season as a whole? Well, meteorological spring starts on the 1st of March. So let's go back to the start of March and look at how much rainfall we have observed over the course of the season. We're at about 7.3 inches between March and April, and that puts us well above average. Needless to say, it has been a wet start to the spring season, and this is a time of year that is notorious for those spring showers. We are at 1.24 inches above average, but if you're watching this on Friday or into the first weekend of May, likely seeing some more showers that'll add on to that total. What about the year so far? 2025 is actually off to a drier than normal start with 10.1 inches of observed rainfall, and that's largely because January and February were below average in the rainfall department. So it has been a wet start to the spring season, but annually we are a little bit below average. And now that spring is underway and we are approaching the planting and the growing season, the weekly drought monitor has started to be issued. Needless to say, there is no drought across northwest Ohio. However, portions of southern Michigan, including Hillsdale County, are considered abnormally dry. That is not an official drought. In fact, it's still too early in the season for any areas to be seeing drought conditions, at least locally, but something to keep an eye on, that it has been a little bit drier up towards Hillsdale and not nearly so much in northwest Ohio. So what about temperatures? It was a soggy start to April, and we have had quite the roller coaster in the temperature department with ups and downs, highs and lows, cold days, and very warm ones as well. Now, we didn't have a single day with highs in the 30s, so if you don't like the cold, that's one bit of good news. There were 6 days, though, with highs in the 40s, and those were largely skewed towards the first half of the month. Highs in the 50s were commonplace over the month of April, and we had 7 days with highs in the 50s, and the most common temperature range, this is about what you'd expect for this time of year. Climatologically speaking, those days in the 60s are the most common during the month of April, and we have 8 of them this month. What about days in the 70s? There were half a dozen days in the 70s and only 3 days in the 80s, with our warmest day recorded at 86 degrees. We were just so slightly shy of the record of 88, and that was set back in 2002, that April 18th record. That was our warmest day over the month at 86. What about the coldest night? We did officially dip down to the mid-20s on April 8th, with temperatures dropping to the mid-20s. Now, seeing frosty conditions into the month of May, not totally out of the ordinary. In fact, our typical last frost of the year happens on May 8th, although believe it or not, we have actually had frost and even freeze into the month of June. In a previous edition of the Climate Friday newsletter, I break down a little bit of the climatology regarding frost and freeze and what you can expect as we gear up for the planting season and Mother's Day weekend as well. Now, we obviously had some ups and downs in the temperature department, but how did April fare as a whole? Well, it was actually very close to normal. When you average out our daytime highs and our overnight lows, the mean temperature for the month, or the average, was right around 51 degrees, and that is very close to normal. But of course, that doesn't tell the full story because of those vast temperature swings that we did observe. In terms of the warmest day, that was April 18th at 86 degrees. So what links are climate change causing, and how is climate change potentially impacting our temperatures locally? Well, we are seeing spring warming that has been evident over not only the past decade, but especially over the past half century or so. Looking at data since 1970, so roughly half a century, we have seen a close to 4-degree increase in spring temperatures in the Toledo area, and that's based on data at Toledo Express Airport. Now, the line of best fit, or that overall trend line, does show you that uptick in spring temps, but you will notice there is still a good amount of year-to-year variability, and individual weather patterns, for instance, La Nina or El Nina, do dictate exactly how much we see in the temperature department and how it deviates from that line of best fit. Now, warm spring days are also becoming more commonplace, and what we're seeing is there are more above average spring days. In fact, in the last half century, we have seen an increase of 15 above average springtime days. And with those above average days, frost and freeze becoming a little less common, and that means a longer growing season. And again, in last week's edition of the Climate Friday newsletter, I break down the growing season and what this means for area gardeners and farmers. If you are gearing up for that spring planting, the conventional wisdom says wait until Mother's Day, and there is a lot of good data that supports that and why you should wait till Mother's Day. But the first full week of May is looking to bring temperatures that are largely going to be above average. It is going to be a little soggy and cool for the first weekend of May, but the long-range outlook is pointing towards a number of days in the 70s next week, and our normal highs for next week climb up to 70 for those daytime highs, and an average overnight low of 47. So in order to get a frosty night, you would have to have temperatures a good 10 to 15 degrees below average and considerably cooler for any sort of impactful hard freeze. We are not expecting frosty weather next week. Yes, there will be some chilly nights this weekend, but overall looking partly sunny and largely dry towards the long-range extended outlook. As we round the corner from April into May, hopefully the weather settles down a little bit in terms of those ups and downs. This time of year is a transitional season, so you can expect warmer temperatures, and May, even though it does bring those beautiful May flowers, still can bring persistent spring showers, and yes, severe weather season will be ramping up. We'll have the latest Climate Friday newsletter sent straight to your inbox every week. Take care and see you next time.